recent census conducted by the government, 22.3% of the population is under the age of 18. That's nearly a quarter of our country. Why do teenagers not have a say in the government? First, let's consider the differences in brain development between a 16 and an 18-year-old. Honestly, there's not much. The majority of change in brain development happens between the ages of 16 and 25, meaning that you really aren't out of puberty until your mid to late 20s, which is somewhat interesting, do what you will with that information. It explains why I've seen a lot of adults act like children on TV and in social media. In all seriousness though, there really aren't any development differences between 16 and 18. Legally sure, but maybe not puberty-wise. College kids and high school kids are still figuring out dating and how not to procrastinate. But sometimes the legal lines get blurred a bit. At 18, you're suddenly allowed to move out into the big bad world and do grown-up things like vote and buy your own car and get your own apartment. However, there is this thing called emancipation. I could drive on down to the DMV right now because as a 16-year-old in this country, I can drive, sign a few papers, begin the process of emancipating myself. And then I get to do all that fun stuff depending on where I live. So that's one issue with our policy. Another issue is the age limit for prosecution. 13 states do not have a legal minimum age for kids being prosecuted. These states being Hawaii, Alaska, Florida, Delaware, Idaho, Maryland, Maine, Pennsylvania, Michigan, South Carolina, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and Tennessee. So legally, you could walk into a state prison full of 10-year-olds, which could be a bit scary. Let's get this straight. Kids can't go out without a parent's permission to enlist in the army, but can't vote on any level. But I could get sent to a federal prison because I'm supposed to know better. That sounds a bit messed up. In 1970, the Voting Rights Act was signed and ratified by President Nixon, which lowered the voting age from 21 to 18 years old. Up until then, there had been protests regarding the U.S. draft, arguing that if 18-year-olds could fight and die in the country, for the country, unwillingly, they should be able to vote. With all due respect, I'd like to add to that. If teenagers can get sent to prison because they supposedly should know better, we should be able to vote. Times have changed since 1970. Now the majority of kids have access to the internet and everything on it, whether good or bad. I have the same access to news outlets as your typical 42-year-old adult. If I can look for answers and I form a proper conjecture based on the evidence I have, who says I shouldn't vote? That connects to the next issue, the voices of the youth being drowned out by the screams of the angry adults. I guarantee you that nearly every teenager has heard the words, "You shouldn't have an opinion. It shouldn't matter to you right now." I certainly have. That's why we avoid getting political at family dinners. Teenagers and kids across the board have been shoved to the side, ignored, told to quiet down. To be fair, nearly everybody has been, but you're more likely to hear the word "shut up" as a kid and as a young adult than someone who's been in the world for years. It doesn't matter if you're unbiased. Nobody's completely unbiased, but the youth, as a minority in America, deserve to have their voices heard. Whether it's a political argument, online, or voting, kids shouldn't be shoved aside. Minors from 16 and up should be able to vote in our country.